Hey, all you beautiful people out there, and welcome to my channel for another rebuttal. Yay! A creationist rebuttal. What we all want, right?
And John Morris Pendleton is the very lucky creationist that I have decided to cut my creationist debunking teeth on. Are you as excited as I am to debunk some creationist nonsense? Then let's sink our teeth into it and let's go. But before we start, just a friendly reminder that if you like this kind of content, please subscribe to my channel. I'd really appreciate it very much.
Hello, I'm scientist John Pendleton, and this is our 8th conference about creation, evolution, dinosaurs, UFOs, the Bible. And today we're going to talk about mutations. And also this is like the first part of 2. We're going to have a continuing part on mutations and also a special section within that about cloning. Here we have what's called the famous tree of life. And of course we have the different tips of this tree are known plants and animals, insects, and creatures that we know. At the base of it is an amoeba, which supposedly all life has come through. And of course the whole idea is that life evolved and that by mutations and beneficial mutations, genetic changes of the DNA, things got better and better.
Wow, John, I thought this was more along the lines of your tree of life than that one. You know, the one in your fairy tale book that you love so much. The one that if we'd eaten of, we would have lived forever. Yeah, right. Anyway, I'm not quite sure where you got that picture, but I'm pretty sure that it is not correct because, I mean, we are not necessarily the branches of the tree. And by we, I'm talking about all the organisms living today. Also, if you look at that picture you have, um, it's not going very far down into the depth of time. And unlike logic, to give you a break on your verbiage, I'm going to bitch at you about it because we did not come from an amoeba. I know you said through and not from, but because I used to be a young earther, I know that the young earthers say that people who believe in evolution say that we came from amoebas, which we do not. And my last point on here is to say that better and better isn't exactly correct because it is context dependent, as I have said before. Let's take skin color as an example. Those living near the equator need more melanin to protect from the rays of the sun, whereas those living farther from the equator need lighter skin in order to better absorb vitamin D.
My youngest son, when he was studying in his 6th year of primary school, had this text which was used here in Mexico, and what it translates as the following. This is about the section on evolution. It says, the branches of biology, such as genetics, paleontology, that's the study of fossils, embryology, and comparative anatomy, fortify the theory of evolution of the species. Now, this is their statement. This is a publication by the Department of Education in Mexico. Any Department of Education in the world, you could probably find the same thing. So first, let's go with comparative anatomy. This shows us different limbs from a salamander, a man, a bat, and a horse. And of course, they all have parts that are the same names. Why? Because man has put those same names there.
Jesus Christ, John, I knew you were stupid, but I didn't know you were this stupid. So let's talk about comparative anatomy, shall we? Before genetics, comparative anatomy was one of our best pieces of evidence for biological evolution. Homologous structures are very similar in embryological development and form, but have different functions. An example of homologous structures are the forelimbs of mammals. Organisms that have homologous structures are more closely related on the evolutionary tree than those that do not have homologous structures. Analogous structures are those that share the same function but are different embryologically and developmentally. An example of analogous structures is a bird's wings and insect wings. Vestigial structures are those that do not serve the same purpose they once did or are smaller than they originally were. An example is the human tailbone. We actually have tails in utero, and some people are actually born with tails. Unlike creationist misrepresentations, vestigial structures are not useless.
Gavin de Beer is an extremely proficient embryologist of the 20th century. And he made this statement: but if it is certain that through genetic codes, the genes that code for different enzymes that synthesize the proteins are responsible in a way that we still do not know in embryology for the differentiation of the various parts of animals, what mechanism is there that can cause the production of homologous organs and their same patterns are not controlled by the same genes? He asked this question in 37. It was still unanswered in 71. It's still unanswered at this time. There is no answer to it. You can't get around it. The genes are different that control similar homologous parts in animals.
I got this picture off of biologyonline.com, and as you can probably guess, I'm going to be talking about what John was just talking about. Unfortunately, he, like all creationists, depend on outdated science. While I can bitch at him for using outdated science, I can't bitch too much about this because science has just recently found an answer to this question. And first, a few definitions. And by recent, I mean about 20 years ago. So not too recent for us, recent for the creationists. Structures are homologous if they derive from the same structure in their last common ancestor. Structures are homocratic if they share the expression of the same patterning genes. So I actually fell down a rabbit hole with this claim. Needless to say that relying on 1977 science is not a good idea when you're talking about genetics. And certainly Darwin had no idea about genetics, and De Beer didn't even fathom it. John is not taking into consideration that the genes and structures and or functions that they control do not have a one-to-one ratio. Neither is he taking into consideration the fact that genes duplicate, insert, or delete. He also leaves out all the times that genes have been found in the correct place in different lineages. I know, shocker. A creationist is leaving out vital information. But aside from the fact that you really need to look things up for yourself rather than just stealing them off of creationist websites, there's a more important lesson to be learned here. And that is just because we have not explained something yet does not mean it does not have an explanation.
What is it? Platypus duckbill. Where did it come from? Parents, platypus duckbills. What will it be? The platypus. And see, that's a real problem for evolution because it looks like so many different animals, but it keeps being the same thing, as God said, according to his species. And that's what we have right now is here in Genesis 1, in chapters 11, 12, 21, 24, and 25, 10 different times we have after his kind, or the equivalent. God established the rule first, after his kind, or after its kind. Genesis 1, 10 times. The second law of biology. They're always producing according to their kind. Never anything unusual comes up.
As you can clearly hear, John is equivocating between species and quote unquote kind. They are not the same thing. In fact, I'm not even sure what a kind is supposed to be. According to the Bible, a kind is a type of animal that can interbreed. According to answers in Genesis, a quote unquote kind can be either of these four things. This is actually the Linnaean Classification system. Gee, imagine that creationists don't keep up with science. But anyway, brief overview of the Linnaean classification system is kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, and we now use cladistics for classifying. Now, I know John knows this because he does use answers in Genesis sometimes. There's a problem with using anything from order, family, genus, and species as a quote unquote kind. And that is that it is too broad, which is probably at least one of the reasons scientists do not use it. Also, in my opinion, it's a pretty dumb, unscientific word. Yeah, but nobody really asked me, huh? So I should probably keep my mouth shut about that. But, you know, normal everyday language, it's fine. But if you want to talk science, use something else. My guess as to why they use such a broad quote unquote definition is that some felines can interbreed with each other. For example, lions and tigers can interbreed with each other. They just don't do so in nature, probably because they don't live near each other. And I should probably put an asterisk by that by saying that some felines can interbreed with each other, such as the big felines can and the small felines can. I find it odd that they need to borrow from science to quote unquote define what they're talking about. I mean, if they are so sure that what they believe is the truth, shouldn't they have their own language to describe what they're talking about, especially since they diss on science? John, the second law of biology states that all living organisms are made up of membrane encased cells. I really do wish that you would read a book, and preferably some papers along with it. Well, friends, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like button, press the subscribe button, and if you want to know when I come out with new content, hit the bell next to the subscribe button.